without further ado, because I know that y'all came to see these real stars, man, we got a great lineup today of chiefs. I'm just super excited. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the chiefs, if you will, to do just a brief bio. I'll go across the screen as I see you all, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation. So first on my screen, I see Chief Jokerst. Is that how you say the last name?
Yes, that's great.
Awesome.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to share the space with these amazing women and colleagues on the call, and I'm so excited to learn from them and their successes and the information they have to share. So my name is Doreen Jokerst. I've been in policing for approximately 23 years, and I'm currently the chief of police at the University of Colorado in Boulder. So Ms. Martin, if you would like to come to Colorado, Boulder, and have some listening sessions here, we invite you to our beautiful city and to our beautiful university. I've been the chief here for approximately 3.5 years. I am a supporter completely of the 30 by 30 initiative, and I'm really excited to share this space. My background is in municipal policing, 20 years as a municipal police officer, where I left at the rank of commander before I took the chief's job here. And so just very excited to be here and share some of my information and to be a part of the discussion. So thank you very much.
Chief, I already booked my flight. I'll see you soon. Next on my screen is Chief Victorian.
Good afternoon, everyone. And again, I just echo Chief Jokerst. Yes, her sentiments and being amongst these amazing ladies on this panel. I look forward to the discussion. I am Sheryl Victorian. I am the Chief of Police for the city of Waco. As I said, when I first got on the call, I feel out of uniform here. I was going to go into my magic closet and throw on my shirt, but it's Friday and I don't get to do this too often. But anyway, I've been a chief of police for the city of Waco, the first female and the first African-American female in the city of Waco since March 15th, 2001. I retired from the Houston Police Department after 28 years of service as an assistant chief with Houston PD. I did not start promoting to through the ranks until my 14th year as a police officer. So I hope that that's encouraging for someone who thinks that, you know, maybe it's too late to get my start to be a chief. It is never too late. I look forward to this discussion. I don't want to take up too much time, but that's me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Victorian. Just as a point of personal privilege, I am very excited for her to be the first African-American woman there. I went to Baylor University and was fighting back then for quite a bit of equity to happen. And so for her to have been appointed just warms my heart. So it's always good to see you. Next on the panel is the woman I say the epitome of excellence. I know she won't like that, but she dots her I's and crosses her T's. Chief Hyatt, introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here with all of you today, and I'm really happy to be here. I am the police chief in Baltimore County, Maryland, coming up on 3 years in that position. Before that, I did a career in the Baltimore City Police Department, and then did a stint in private sector as the vice president of security at Johns Hopkins. But I just really missed being in police work. And, you know, it's really a privilege to be here. The work that 30 by 30 is doing, frankly, the awareness that it's bringing, the conversations that are spiraling from it, it just shows the value. And this is just such a great initiative to support. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hyatt. And I'm going to come over now to Chief Wimberly. We were actually, I think I got to see you not too long ago on the PERF discussion around extremism. So very happy to see you again. Give us a little introduction.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Robin Wimberly. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Office of Professional Responsibility. I'm here representing the Philadelphia Police Department for Commissioner Outlaw. I've been with the department for 34 years and currently in my assignment as the Deputy of OPR for the last 5 years. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Chief Wimberly. And last but certainly not least, Chief Bumpers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I echo what everyone else has said. Thank you so much for the invitation, and definitely excited to be amongst some great leaders, excited to learn and share. My name is Vera Bumpers. I am the Chief of Metro Transit Police in Houston, Texas. I have been police officer with this department for 38 years. I have been the chief for 7 years. I was the first female in every rank at the department. So moving on up. Was the only female for about a year when we first started, but definitely have enjoyed the ride. I still think this is a very noble profession, and women definitely have a place in this profession. So looking forward to the conversation.
And I actually need to circle on back around to Chief Roman, who's part of this is her brainchild and is just a relentless pursuer of all things for women in policing. So Chief Roman, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Ivonne Roman. I spent 25 years in the Newark, New Jersey Police Department. I was their first Latina chief. I made rank around my 19th year, and then there was a change in administration, and an agency is only as good as its leadership. And the new leadership didn't really have an appreciation for female commanders. There was only one other woman in my rank, so I didn't really have a network. Luckily, I had Maureen McGough at the National Institute of Justice, where she was leading the LEADS program. And I told her not only the conflicts that I was having, but women were failing academies at 65 to 80% in New Jersey. And I didn't know if that was limited to just New Jersey or the country. And together we found out it wasn't just New Jersey, and I wasn't the only person that was noticing that this was happening, that it was happening to so many others. So together here we are, 30 by 30, and nothing warms my heart more than seeing all these faces here and seeing all the progress that we made in just one short year. So thank you so much, because it wouldn't happen without all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for that. So let's jump right into it. So, you know, we lost a giant in women's empowerment this week, Madeleine Albright. And so one of my favorite quotes from her is, "There is a special place in hell for women who don't help other women." And so, you know, let's talk about what has been your experience advocating for women in law enforcement from the inside. And how has your experience shaped your advocacy efforts? And, you know, if let's just start with you, Chief Roman. Tell us about your experience.
So we base 30 by 30 on representative bureaucracy. So a marginalized group isn't comfortable enough advocating for themselves until they reach that tipping point of 30 by 30. So other women saw what was happening to me in the Newark Police Department, right? But they were scared to stick their head out of their shell. So the only other person of my rank was a female, and she was assigned to the director's office. So I didn't have that network, that support system. But you don't have to be isolated to your own department. I found a network outside of the police department, thankfully through the Department of Justice, and here we are. So you don't have to let it end right where you're at, though you may have to readjust and re-identify what your goals are.
So, and I can go around the horn, but anybody wants to jump in, you know, right away, just let me know. So I'm gonna go back the other way. So Chief Bumpers.
I believe many times you have to advocate for yourself. You know you and what you're capable of, but you have to let other people know. There's not always a woman around for you to pattern yourself behind, because as Ivonne stated, when I came along, there weren't any women in the agency for me to look at, me being the first. So I had to look outside of this agency. And then there were men who were very committed to helping me. So don't limit yourself to just saying it has to be a female, because there are a lot of men out there that care about seeing women move up in the rank and promoting women, but starting with you first, advocating for you.
And we'll talk about this probably a little bit later, but what was the way? I mean, you were the first in so many different ways. What's one of the ways that you were able to advocate for yourself as an example that somebody might be looking for? Well, how do I go tomorrow and try to do this?
One of the things is that I looked around, any training that I could take advantage of, I went to it. I invested in myself, continued to educate myself, going back to school, getting my master's, but I made sure that I would see conferences, I would sign up to go. Didn't wait till the the department would send me. But I made sure that I went to different events. And even outside of law enforcement, there are a lot of organizations that have events, conferences, where you can glean leadership information and glean information that will help you continue to build yourself and feel empowered. So I knew I had to do that, and definitely leaning on my faith in God and friends and family who continue to support me. My dad, because I wanted to quit, he would always say, you can do it, you can do it. So we need that cheerleader behind us to continue to push us. But more than anything, as I said earlier, just, looking at you and believing every day in the mirror, having those affirmations to say, I can do this.
That's so true. That's so true, because despite anybody who's supporting you, you're the one that has to take the first step, as scary as it may be. How about you, Chief Wimberly?
So I would say just mentorship with some of the women, and making them, letting them know what resources are available. Because a lot of the times in this department is very large, so it's very cliquey sometimes. So Northwestern University, how do I get to apply for that? Things like that. And being able to put the resources right there for them so that they can move up. And like Chief Bumper said, like, educate yourself, get the training. But if you don't know it exists and everyone's talking in silos, then the opportunity is not going to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, and it's funny, as I travel across the country, I can see the same police department, the same police officer in Denver to Waco to, right? So a lot of these things do translate, and the clicks do translate. And if you're not in the right click, you don't always get access in that information. So that's helpful. Chief Hyatt.
So for me, when I reflect back on my experience, and I think about some of the challenges that I had, particularly in some units where I was either the first or the only woman in the unit. And as I've moved up and beyond in my career, when I recognize those challenges, whether it's, gear not fitting or opportunities that aren't available, for me, it's figuring out what some of those barriers are and how to try to remove them. That way, and I completely agree with what Chief Bumper said, sometimes it's advocating for yourself and making sure that you're doing everything that you can to be successful, to make yourself better. But, as then we continue to move up in our own careers, remembering what some of those challenges were that maybe were challenges that shouldn't have been there, barriers that shouldn't have existed, and figuring out how to remove them for other people.
Thank you for that. I think that's critical. Once we get up there, we can't forget about the ones behind us. Chief Victorian.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to start by saying the quote that you quoted by Madeleine Albright. If this is the case, then that means that Chief Bumpers is on her way to heaven, because the moment that I promoted to assistant chief in Houston, I didn't know who she was. She reached out to me on social media to say, I am here for you. If you need anything, I need you to join Noble. I mean, she was there. So kudos and thank you, my friend, Chief Bumpers. So what I've learned as I started promoting throughout the organization was that we have to encourage our young ladies to promote. They come up with all kinds of excuses not to promote. And sometimes we have to recognize potential in people who don't see potential in themselves. And we have to bring that to the forefront. And I love that I'm not the only one that see that professional development opportunities have been siloed. I was a sergeant in the Houston Police Department, and it was my PhD professor, my dissertation chair, who told me about organizations like International Association of Police, PERF, Major City Chiefs Association. That didn't come from inside. Because only certain people were privy to those opportunities. So I make sure now that young ladies know about those opportunities and other opportunities to develop professionally, develop their skills. I make myself available for assessment opportunities. I can't do it now as chief in Waco, but I have plenty of resources in the city of Houston where people can call and develop in those areas during promotional time. So that is how I advocate currently. And thank you again, my Chief Bumpers.
That's amazing. I love that. And leading by example. And I do have to encourage everyone. I didn't go through this, But read these women's bios, the training, the education, all the things that they have done. I mean, all of them. There's a litany of that, feeding into themselves. Chief Jokerst.
Jokers, yes. Thank you very much. So I agree with what my colleagues on the call have said. I went to the police academy at 20 and started when I was 21. And so I was the only female supervisor in the entire organization as I promoted through the ranks. And so for me, to kind of highlight what they have said, career diversification was a big one. Sometimes it's my less than favorable assignments that yielded the biggest resorts. And sometimes we can't get out of our own way. I tell women now, the person you're going to talk to the most in your entire life is yourself. And look how you talk to yourself all the time. And so we have this confidence gap, and sometimes we bring ourselves down, let alone each other sometimes in this organization. So it's all about empowering, lifting people up, and watching what you say to yourself. And I always wanted to be the leader I wish I had. And so every opportunity was a growth moment for me to say, I don't care how that person talks to me. And if I was ever in that position, here's how I would handle that differently. And I remembered those things throughout my entire time as I promoted to say, I wouldn't have handled it that way. And here's what I'd ever do if I had the opportunity and privilege to lead those that work for me. So I think a lot of those things for me are what I do now today. And really just talking about having an inclusive culture where everybody matters, everybody has an opinion, and not just bringing people up through the ranks.
I'm on a conference call.
But diversifying within the department and different special assignments within the field. And so those.
Okay, I think we got her unmuted.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's the other thing I want to encourage. I know we have folks on here from all different backgrounds, but if you're on here and you're trying to, taking copious notes on how to be able to do some of these things, also look at the assignments, very varied assignments across all these chiefs, some of which, of course, like you said, were not the ones that you wanted, but it makes a huge difference. And sometimes I think, when you're advocating for yourself, you almost have to make it almost like the Supreme Court justice, where, look, how can you even argue against the background? The resume is there. And I think that can, often sometimes help you advocate. I'm going to switch to the next question, but I do want to throw just one question out there. I specifically remember a woman when I was at Baltimore City coming to me and saying, hey, there is a great lieutenant and she's da 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 and blah blah blah. Nobody's paying attention to her. I started paying attention to her, and then I went to the commissioner and say, hey, what about this woman? Blah blah blah. And do you have an example where you can give where you went and advocated for a particular person or a particular woman? Because sometimes it's easy to hear kind of how kind of from a higher level, but people like to kind of see what was the step. And that can be open for anyone.
I can answer that from my perspective. When I tested for lieutenant and received it, I had told my chief at the time, I'd like to have a professional mentor and a coach. I'd like someone to help me. And maybe how I presented it was a little, he's like, well, I'm here to help you. And he was. And I said, I know, but I want a female in an organization. And since there was none in my department, I said that can really speak to the challenges I'm seeing. And so he teamed me up with Tracy Kazee when she worked at Denver PD. And so I heard you mention her, Ganesha, in regards to that. And that to me, when speaking about mentors outside your own organization, and then learning you have some similar challenges and what different people have done. And so I personally asked for a mentor, and I was fortunate enough and lucky enough that that's who he teamed me up with. And I can tell you today as chief, while she leads the Center for Policing Equity, I still meet with her every 6 weeks, and we go through challenges I'm seeing on our university campus and things I experience as a chief, and it has followed me throughout my entire career, and I can't speak highly enough about that. And I'm very fortunate for her in my life.
Well, let me just double down on that. This goes back to just ask, because she got the best mentor you could probably get in policing by just asking. So that's amazing. Thank you for that example. That was great. So, let's go to the next piece we want to kind of look at here. So all the statistics say women shoot less, problem solve more, are sued less use of force. I was just on a panel in Vegas with an assistant chief who said in her 26 years, and she was in some tough places in Milwaukee, she never had to unholster her gun. She said, I use this all the time. And so that's not everybody's experience, but she said that it was because of just how she operated. So from your perspective, what are the strengths, the powers, the gifts that women in law enforcement possess that really the community really is crying out for? What are those things that you all have seen, and how do they manifest? And I'm just gonna pop around. I'm gonna do popcorn now. So I'm gonna come to you, Chief Hyatt.
So in my experience, and again, this isn't across the board, but I have seen that generally speaking, women tend to have very good at communication and interpersonal skills. And I think that's a benefit, certainly on the street, out dealing with the community on the street. But I think interdepartmentally, it's also important to have the ability to empathize and to frequently treat your employees with a level of caring besides the job that has to be done. And I also think as it pertains to, things like de-escalation, that is another skill that while it's very beneficial in the community, especially when you rise to the level of being in senior management or leadership in law enforcement, those are skills that are important for team building with your own executive leadership.
And Chief, if I could, because we've been on this women's journey kind of together for a minute. I think that early in you're all a chiefs, right? At this point, you've achieved this level, but sometimes it could be difficult when you're young in your career to kind of say yes, kind of own that women do these things better, and actually put it out there as like an accolade, or like, yeah, I'm good at this because of that. Can you speak? Has there been a transition with you where maybe in your younger years, you wouldn't have been able to kind of claim that as a power and a gift, but now you're able to do that? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I still think these maybe are my younger years, but I think when I was younger, and I'll reflect back to, I spent a significant portion of my career on Baltimore City Police Department's SWAT team. And while I was there as the only female, it certainly, those weren't traits that were generally things that I embraced or, really that I managed in any way. And I think it's as I have continued to probably get a little bit older, mature a little bit, that I started to see where there are some differences, where some of these maybe unique skills that women do tend to possess, where there's a place for them. And, as I look around now, leading an organization, and I see it in a lot of my other employees, I think instead of being something that we try to kind of cover so everybody's the same, it's really about embracing those skills, that some of those unique skills that we have.
I like that. I like that. Embrace the unique skills. Chief Bumpers, let me come over to you. What are some of these gifts and things that women possess that can help us in this profession?
Well, I think that we're definitely multitaskers. We do that quite well. We're visionaries, and I believe that we're able to give constructive guidance instead of constructive criticism. And we do things with balance. We're able to look at a big picture, I believe, as women, because we bring some of those traits that we use at our homes. Some of us are the leaders in our homes. Even if we have a spouse, we're pretty much multitasking and doing everything at the house. So I think we bring some of that skill set to our professions. And women in this profession, even with the men, they see it when they're working with you. They may not say it, but they see it, the value that you bring to the table. And I wanted to say earlier, one thing about being number one, it doesn't matter unless there are numbers following you. It's very important that we're bringing others behind us and that we're setting the tone. And that's what I love about 30 by 30. It sets a tone that women are here to stay and that we will continue to rise throughout the ranks in every profession, in every part of the department. Just not clerical, but we can be, as Chief Hyatt said, part of the SWAT team. So I'm excited to see that. But we bring something to every part of the department. but I think that we don't speak on it often enough. We don't toot our own horn. Sometimes we kind of will stand back and be quiet, waiting for somebody else to say what a great job or the value that you are to this agency. And sometimes we need to say that. We need to let them see our crown.
I really agree with that. I love what you say about, making sure that the numbers come after you. But one of the things, when I was celebrating one of my chief friends, she says, it's hard. It's hard being the first too. To Yvonne's point, you don't have an example, you don't have the network, somebody who has a particular understanding. And so as we continue to move through and celebrate, and even in the comments, Iris said that as being the first, we always have to continue to support the ones that have made it up to that top, because now it's just an easier target because you're up there by yourself. But not with 30 by 30, we always got your back. Let me come over there, Chief Wimberly. What's your thoughts?
I agree with what has been said thus far. For me, especially empathy and understanding, and having the ability to make people feel like you see them. People, they don't care what you know, they want to know that you care. And that's even with dealing with people in the community and people in our organization. So I think that is a real strength for us as well.
I love that. I really believe part of what's going on in policing right now is we're not taking care of people as humans. So you can't have a human with a badge and then that's not taken care of, go take care of a human in the community that's not being taken care of. And so, Chief Roman, talk to us about what you've seen, that is helpful, in this space and needed in policing right now from women.
I think it's identifying talent in other folks and being able to advocate for them to bring up their names in a room where decisions are being made. So I spent way too much time in gangs and narcotics, but I was able to see which investigators were able to build rapport and build relationships with witnesses and informants. And then when I became the robbery commander, I chose those investigators who were still free agents that no one had snatched up. And they just happened to be all women, and it wasn't intentional, but I wound up with a robbery squad that was predominantly women, and their numbers increased threefold. And so I was at CompStat and they asked me, what did you do to turn that squad around? And I said, well, I got the best investigators available. And that's when it dawned on me. And I'm like, and they happen to be all women. So I think it's making sure that people's talents are recognized and that you are able to advocate for them and give them the opportunities for those positions that they may not otherwise be able to access. Yeah.
Chief Harrison and Chief Davis have both said to me, I choose the best candidate. They just happen to be women. Chief Victorian, tell us your thoughts.
I think I'm going to sum up what everybody else just said in 2 words. We have a higher level of emotional intelligence. We just do. We're self-aware. We care about the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of our teams and of other women. We have those interpersonal skills, and even in communication, something that we have that we're talking about increased communications that a lot of guys don't have is that we have the ability to read people's body language. Because we know our own, and we have to be mindful of our own body language, right? But I think it's because we have a high level of emotional intelligence.
We can see those conversations that are happening out the mouth and the ones that are really happening in the room, right?
Right. That's right.
It's true. Chief Jokerst.
Yes, thank you. So I agree. I think it's empathy, compassion, and understanding. I think women are really good at communication. I do think communication starts with listening and with the intent to understand the other person's perspective in regards to what that looks like. And as you asked us in regards to like going through the organization and sometimes not feeling like we can talk about these strengths and what makes us stand out and what makes us be so great. I can tell you when I was 21 and 22, when I reflect back, I just wanted to fit in. And there wasn't that many females. There's only 3 in the whole department, and I remember the chief pulling me aside at 22 and saying, what are you doing? I said, I'm fitting in. This is what we like. And he said, Doreen, you weren't hired to fit in. You were hired for your strengths. Expand on your strengths. And then that's what I started doing. But I can tell you, being new and not having very many females, you know, sometimes you just want to fit in, you want to be treated as equal, you want to be treated like everybody else, and you're trying to figure out exactly what that looks like in this brand new profession. And so I would tell people, really capitalize on your strengths. You were hired here for the great attributes you bring to the table, and really expand those and bring those up with you.
That is so important. And I love that, Chief. You know, I remember a time in Baltimore City, some men that I had actually got promoted and hired, they actually staged a coup. And it was very hurtful how they tried to get me out of my position. And then the chief noted that I had stopped speaking up as much in meetings and said, you know, don't do that. But one of the things was, wow, she sure does talk a lot, which y'all might be thinking that too. But you know, having somebody who, you know, is helpful in that regard. And there was something I wanted to circle back to you on, because it's something that Deirdre brings up and it shows in this film of Women in Blue. There's a young recruit who her father asked her at the table, you know, are you the same person that you were? And she says, no. And he goes, well, what's different? And she's real uncomfortable. And she said, I don't take no shit. And you can tell that she's trying to mimic and mock, you know, or just trying to be like what she thinks that she is supposed to be. You can see that struggle, you know, in her. And so that takes me to my next question. And even with 30 by 30, I don't know if you guys have had this experience where it's like, oh, why are women better? And what about me? And I don't get fair, you know, this kind of uplifting of, well, you know, is this reverse, you know, affirmative action and, you know, all these sorts of things. Let's kind of talk about the nitty gritty of this thing. What advice would you all give to rising female leaders in law enforcement? You know, people find themselves in all different type of environments, in different, some might have, you know, supportive chiefs, some might not, but what advice would you give to rising female leaders in law enforcement? And I'll start with Chief Victorian.
Thank you. That's a great question. First thing I would do is tell them to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to them, and then expand their resume if they can within your department. If you have the opportunity to work or supervise and patrol, you need to do that. If you have an opportunity to go to investigations, you need to do that. One thing that I wished I would have done during my career, because initially, when I first became a police officer, all I wanted to do was put the bad guy in jail. You talked about community service, and I talked about it's not police work, right? And it wasn't until I matured as a police officer and began to understand the importance of prevention and intervention over apprehension. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some people that need to go to jail all the time, but taking advantages of opportunities. I did not want to go to admin positions. I was not. And then I found in my role, you start promoting to the mid-managers level, and that's what it is. It's admin, it's budget, it's planning. So take advantage of any opportunity that you have presented to you. One other thing that I was thought that I was going to be able to, but didn't do, but so glad that I did. I tried to get out of going to Internal Affairs Division. That would have been a big mistake. Fortunately, I had someone who didn't even know me well, but knew enough about me to come to me and say, hey, I see you promoting throughout this organization. If you want to be at the executive level, you need to see the good, the bad, and the ugly of our police department. And I learned so much. I guess I was just a naive police officer, or a naive sergeant too, to think that people did the right thing on and off duty. We had people to get fired. I saw that, and you know, people usually see that coming. But in internal affairs, I got to see some of the mistakes that we made on and off duty, and it made me a better manager, and it's made me a better police chief. Spending those 3 years in internal affairs division and learning how to recommend discipline and administer discipline fairly and consistently.
That goes back to that pressure too. I mean, you know, you get so much pressure when you go to IA. You're now a snitch now, and you're not one of us now, and you know, all those different pressures you have to deal with. But I really appreciate that advice. Chief Bumpers, what advice would you give to, you know, a rising female leader in law enforcement?
I would definitely say make sure you are doing everything you can to prepare yourself. You just don't walk into leadership, and it's lonely at the top. So it's very important, whether that is, you can be mentored from afar. You don't have to be up close and personal. You can, a lot of mentors that I had, that's from afar. I didn't know them and they didn't know me, but I was watching their career. So make sure you're open to be mentored. And even if you have an up close and personal mentor, make sure you're willing to accept that constructive guidance. Look at those who've already done it. There's so much to learn from that. And then I compare it to a butterfly in the cocoon. A butterfly cannot come out before their wings are strong. Even though there may be a little opening, if you cut it open and you allow them to come out, they will not fly because they're not ready. Make sure when your name is called, you're ready, and don't come out before it's time. You have to be prepared, and you're going to have to go through some things and be willing to do that. Whether it's losing friends, losing those who say you shouldn't do this, you're going to have that internal fortitude to say, no matter what anybody says, I know who I am, I know what I bring to the table, and nobody can tell me anything different. That's building up that internal strength, because there will be battles ahead when you're moving up.
Great advice, great advice. Chief Wimberly?
Well, so this one, I have a whole lot, so I'm gonna leave some for other people.
Okay.
One, never dim your light, not for anyone. Always operate in integrity, even when it's not popular. And it's not, and it's unfortunate, but it's not. And don't be impressed with the fan foe base, because it can go either way any day of the week. Be confident in who you are and what you bring to the table.
I love it, I love it. Me popcorning around has got me off of my, so I think I'm coming to Chief Victorian. No, you started us out, right? Okay. I think, I know we haven't heard from Chief Jokerst.
Perfect. Thank you. So I agree with what everyone said. I would say for me, never be afraid to learn new things. Change is uncomfortable, but I really think true growth comes from those uncomfortable times. Know your stuff, then some. I say be a forever learner and a forever student. Regardless of how high you get up the ranks, you should always be learning and trying to figure out new things, and not doing the old adage of this is the way we've always done it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Always be a forever learner, regardless of what rank you learn in. Learn how to handle conflict. Don't take it personally or don't be easily offended, but learn how to have crucial conversations. And to Chief Victorian's point, career diversification. Internal affairs for me was my biggest growth opportunity than any other assignment I have done in my policing profession. I had to handle working with employees that really didn't want to talk to me. And at the same time, working with community members that didn't trust me because I was an employee of the police department, and gaining that trust from our community members and having those conversations and really upholding the integrity of the police department as the sole reason for that job. And I got to see what then went to the chief's chest and what frustrated him and what that looked like. And so for me, to Chief Victorian's point, internal affairs was my biggest growth opportunity and moment that I've had. And so it is sometimes those less than favorable assignments that don't seem advantageous and you don't really want to take, really helped me when I went back to the patrol division to understand things from a more global perspective and a more well-rounded position to make better informed decisions when I was supporting our patrol officers. And so those are some that I would say.
Awesome, awesome. I appreciate that. So then we're going to transition now to supervisors and ask you guys' advice. What can supervisors, both men and women, do to better develop and support the women that they lead? And I'll start with you, Chief Roman.
Again, I think it's recognizing talent or recognizing people that can benefit from more training, or recommending someone for a grooming opportunity. We mentioned the PERF and FBI, NA. Usually it's someone that's connected to someone that gets sent there. So police leaders tend to groom people that are just like them, right? So try to advocate for someone and say, you know, this person really deserves to be on this list, and have records of what they've done to be able to push for that person to get that role. Also, Find those folks that are stagnant in one position because they like it, but they have leadership potential, and make them take that stretch assignment, like internal affairs that everyone's been mentioning, right? So many times we get stuck in the sexy assignments, right? Either gangs or narcotics, or women tend to get put in domestic violence or juvenile services. But you have to learn the business end of a police department too, how to pass resolutions and budgets, what the hiring process is like. So make sure that if someone has aspirations for leadership roles, that they knows what it's going to take to get there, and that you help them flesh out how to attain all the skills and assignments that will have them be competitive for that role.
Yeah, I love that. And this kind of goes back to what I think Chief Bumpers was saying. You have to be clear about what you're trying to accomplish, and then make sure that you're getting those type of experiences, because the sexiness is like you want the pat on the back. But if you're really trying to go for a higher rank, I know a lot of people feel like those administrative roles are that means you're walking backwards, but actually it gives you, to your point, a lot of things that you need to ascend the ranks. So Chief Bumpers, what advice would you give to supervisors?
I would tell leaders to give women an opportunity to be exposed, and don't allow the ceiling to be just glass or ceramic. Allow them to look up and be exposed to it. And even though they may not have a seat at the table, allow them to bring a folding chair so they can just see what's going on and be exposed. And I would tell leaders, allow the women space to move the conversation from the ladies' room to the boardroom. Allow them to meet, allow them to get together, because there are things that they want to discuss that they can help each other. And for years, all of our superheroes have been men. So as now you see superheroes becoming women, that means we're trying to play catch up. But leaders have to be open to allow us to give us that space, and let the men know we're giving them that space because they do bring something to the table. Advocate for us and show them, be intentional about allowing us in those spaces.
I love that. Chief Wimberly?
I agree with Chief Bumpers. And also just having those conversations, the supervisor should really know 3 things about everyone that works for them when you're talking at the sergeant level. And then they can get an idea of what the aspirations are, what the weaknesses are, and then make resources available to build them up on both sides.
Okay. I think with 5 minutes left, I want to shift.
So Ganesha, we technically go to 4:15.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
But Kim Craven does have an announcement at the end, so we'll want to leave a little bit of time.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. Chief Hyatt, tell us what's the advice that you give to supervisors?
So I think my advice to supervisors is probably pretty similar to what's already been said, just in terms of open dialogue and helping remove barriers. If I can go back to the last question, though, in terms of advice for female leaders that are rising up, one of the things that I think it's important to say is about kind of maintaining their path, maintaining their goals, and the reality. And I'm sure that everyone on this panel knows this. You're going to get kicked in the face. And when that happens, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should change your goals. You keep your eye on what the prize is and just keep going. And sometimes, the worst assignments, and when I had some of them, Ganesha, sometimes the worst assignments or the worst things that happen, if you can reframe them into something positive, end up being the things that end up defining your career. And so that's just something I think it's important to make sure that we're telling all of our employees and rising stars.
Great point. There will be some kicks in the face. Absolutely. Chief Victorian?
I would say the first thing that leaders need to do, both male and female, is to recognize the value that we bring to this profession. If we have people in leadership positions that don't understand the different dynamics of the values that we bring, they may not even be willing to help us get to that next level, right? The second thing that I would say is be our sponsors. I would not be the chief of police in the city of Waco if someone had not spoke on my behalf to somebody who called Houston and told them what they were looking for. And then for that person to call me and say, hey, they have this position open in Waco. This is what they told me they're looking for. It sounded like you. I told them about you. and they wanted me to tell you about this position. I would have never known, you know, so I think that it's important that as leaders that we actually sponsor. We're always talking about networking, right, and mentorship, but sponsoring comes with a different set of responsibilities by, you know, going out and advocating to others outside and inside the organization for our females.
I agree with that. And the intentionality, there's, and I think I might have saw him on here, but there was a chief that I spoke to who said, you know, if you are not intentionally including, you're intentionally excluding. And I think one of the things that we do is we stay in our head so much and assume that sponsors and or supervisors actually know how to do this right. And they don't always. So speaking up on our behalf, and then as chiefs, making sure that other folks actually know how to advocate for women. It seems like it's simple, but it actually sometimes is a difficult task for some folks who don't know how to do it. Chief Jokerst.
Yes, thank you. And so I think some supervisors, you know, if we have supervisors on this call that are leading women, I would encourage and challenge you after this to say, hey, I attended a webinar and I would like to know, you know, what I can do to better support you in the organization. Sometimes just because a woman does not speak up doesn't mean she doesn't want to get promoted or doesn't have questions. And so I would say directly outreach and start the dialogue and discussion and say, what can I do to better support you? What can the department do better to support all our women? And this is both commissioner, sworn, and professional staff. Women collectively as a whole that make up these amazing police departments. What can we do to uplift, support, and help them out? And so I would say it starts with that intentionality and that discussion. And I would highly encourage and challenge those on this call to start those conversations with those that work for them.
Chief, and that's a good point. And Iris brought it up in the comments about the civilian women. I've been doing work across the country, and you all know there is in a lot of departments this distinction between civilian and sworn, and sometimes with women it's even harder. And so making sure that we take these lessons back to our departments, not only for sworn and civilian, I think, because when one of us rises, we all rise. So the last couple of minutes, I want to kind of focus and get a little bit tactical with you all. This is going to bring in Dr. Nikki's question here about chiefs dealing with policies in their departments that may be discriminatory based on gender, and what is being done to address and change those policies. So my overall question is, you know, what are some of the biggest obstacles that you guys have seen with women rising through the ranks? And then whether it's your department or some other department, what have you seen some promising best practices? Because I mean, literally, this is what 30 by 30 is trying to accomplish. How do we hear what's happening in departments? We all know you're fighting crime, you got shrinking budgets, you got, you know, you're all supposed to be reimagining public safety and doing all the things. So 30 by 30 wants to come alongside you and say, okay, here are the issues and how can we be helpful? You know, Mo spoke to that earlier about collecting data, analyzing data, those things. So just, you can take this question kind of in any of those directions that I just talked about. You know, what are some of the biggest obstacles to women rising through the ranks, and what are some promising practices of overcoming these obstacles? And if you can bring in what Nikki asked about policies, I think that'd be great too. So I'm gonna start with Chief Roman.
So policies are important. They influence, you know, how the department is run, and they influence who decides to apply for the job. There was a young lady that I was training to become a police officer, and she was fantastic. She was performing the best out of all of them. And I asked her if she was going to go to this large city, and she said no, because they require you to cut your hair. She was African-American. So policies like that, the military doesn't require women to cut their hair. So why are police departments requiring for them to cut their hair? I heard a story about Chief Outlaw walking down the hallway, and someone made a comment about her nails, saying, hey, you're out of uniform, your nails are painted. And she says, okay, we'll get rid of that policy, right? Does the policy mean that you're a better officer or not, right? If the policy doesn't serve some metric as to the welfare, how the department is run, and it discourages women from coming on. So that's an easy one that you can fix. I spoke to a commander in Iowa State Police about testing. So people with veteran status had extra points. And he was talking to me about getting women up through the ranks. I says, well, men earn extra points if they happen to be veterans. And yeah, women could be veterans, but overwhelmingly it's men. So I said, so how about considering another way that you can add points? Let's say by college or education, women overwhelmingly have advanced degrees, like everyone on this panel, right? But he refused, right? He was like, no, that's not acceptable. You have to level the playing field, right? If there's something that overwhelmingly benefits one group, then you have to offer an alternative to level it up.
I love that. I love that. But that takes intentionality. That takes looking at the data, looking at the policies, and figuring that out. Chief Bumpers.
I believe engaging officers. I have I meet with officers probably a couple of times a month, and it's called a TAP meeting, and that TAP stands for talking about positives. And that is where I want to hear, because the officers will bring you information or concerns, and we're not complaining about supervisors or shifts. We're just talking about how can we improve in some areas? What are some obstacles? What are some things we're doing good? We want to hear about what we're doing good. So some of my best recommendations have come from those meetings, and it's voluntary. Anybody can come, and I try to do it on different shifts, just not when it's convenient for me. I've done it late at night for night shift. So I think having your personnel engaged, there have been males that bring forth recommendations that would help females. I think one of the obstacles we have right now would probably be childcare. And our organization is working possibly with contracting with some daycares, where 24-hour daycares, where we would make childcare affordable and accessible for our personnel. So that is a huge issue, I think, for many women. But identifying some of those issues and saying, we're just not going to talk about it, as somebody said earlier, but we're going to do what we can to make sure we make an impact and where we can make some change. And it's just about being open to something new and different. So I'm not having a huge issue with policies, because one of the things about being a female at the top, if I know it's an issue, I can change it. So just like Chief Commissioner Outlaw did, that's one of the good things about it. But I'm sure males would too. But sometimes we just don't bring the issue. So if you don't know, you can't do anything about it.
It's true. And these things, sometimes these things seem small, but they're big. I mean, that was one of the things that was so, surprising to me in Baltimore City. Your fingernails, you couldn't paint your fingernails. And your hair had to be a certain way. So we're asking people to not be who they are, just to come onto the job. So I appreciate that. Chief Wimberly.
Yes, I agree. Coming on 33, 34 years ago, I only got to paint my nails for the last 2 years. It's been like really great. I think some of the obstacles for us would be like the way our culture is here, and I'm gonna get promoted. I'm gonna leave my day work position to go to an assignment that's not as, as good as the position that I was in. So just making sure that when promotions happen or movement happens, that we make sure that they are included in some of the more favorable assignments. We're getting there, but we still have a long way to go. So I think that's one of the things that we can actually control.
I think that's a really good point. We found, surprisingly, that a lot of police departments across the country have no idea how many women they have at what ranks. And so if you don't track those things, you don't actually know whether you are taking those things into consideration, Chief Wimberly, when there's promotions or when there are assignments being made. So tracking and looking and being intentional about those things, I think, are important. Something 30 by 30 really wants to help departments do. Chief Hyatt.
So it's actually really great, because I'm going to call her out, but my diversity, equity, and inclusion director, Kelly Fenner, I see is on here today. And some of the work that she's been able to do, and I really saw the value of DEI while I was in the private sector, and some of the work that she's doing along with a lot of folks throughout the department, things like as it pertains to promotional opportunities or specialized units, being able to give equal opportunities to everyone to work on studying on the oral exam, preparing for interviews for specialized units, reviewing our policies to see if there are issues within our policies that just simply haven't been detected before, or places where we may be having an impact and we don't even realize it. And, this is the beginning of what I think is going to be a lot more of that we continue to do. But between that and a mentoring program that they're building, I think this is going to help us start to gain the momentum to be able to look at whether a lot of it's culture. Sometimes we can look at policies, and I mean, to be honest, the policies are the easy ones to change. It's the culture and the stereotypes. And by embedding her, I just said to her the other day, in another year from now, in 2 years from now, think about how many people will come into our police department and will have never known a police department without a DEI officer. And so I think it's just starting to change that culture, and it has to start somewhere. So I think that helps.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And Nikki, maybe we'll connect with her and get some of the tidbits. Chief Victorian.
I would say one of the biggest obstacles with women rising through ranks, of course, has already been mentioned, is shift work. One of the things that we found in when I was at the Houston Police Department, I thought this was really critical and kind of progressive thinking, is we have a lot of crises and significant events, especially as it relates to hurricanes or whatever, right? And we would go on these, even during the protests, we'd go on 24-hour shifts. A lot of our females were single parents or married to other police officers and would be on the same shift. So who had childcare, right? So we would work with those couples, making sure that they were on different shifts and they were able to take care of their childcare needs. And those that were single, if they were having their moms or their siblings or someone else babysit for them, work with them to determine, what time those babysitters would be able to assist so that they can adjust their shifts and be at work. And when we were on 24-hour shifts, if one of the parents had to be at home, then we'd have to look at who was in the most critical position based on position, who had the most critical assignment, and that person would be the one on 24-hour shifts, and that other person would be at home. So it's just something as minor as that that can make a difference in some of our ladies deciding to promote when it comes to shift work.
I love that. And sometimes just having that conversation, letting people know it's okay to need that help. So Chief Jokerst, you're going to round us out here, and then I'm going to go over to Kim Craven for some announcements.
Perfect. Thank you. So I agree with everything my colleague said, from shift work and everything else. Something we do, we have a great HR director here at our police department who wrote a recruitment plan. So we analyze that from the ground up to figure out, are we losing groups of people, whether it be females, underrepresented groups at a certain place, that we can look at when it comes to our hiring practices to make sure that we're not unfairly or unjustly doing something during a certain portion. And so we analyze that every year to look for any gaps or trends that may be negatively affecting certain populations. We proactively do that. But I agree with everything that's been said. And I think one of the biggest obstacles is ourselves. Either we talk ourselves out of it, or we don't have the mentorship programs to really help and lift us up. And so sometimes we just need to get out of our own ways and know that, again, we're here for all the reasons why we have the strengths that we do, and to start promoting our own selves.
So I just want to thank you all. This has been a wonderful panel. I appreciate you all showing up, being open, being honest, and giving these gems for us to use, not only in what we're trying to do with this work, helping police departments across the country, but certainly for all the folks who showed up today, looking for that encouragement, that advice. I really appreciate you all.